All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for coming to our session today, Rising to STEAM Challenges. My name is Philippa Rappaport. I'm the Head of Education and Engagement at the Smithsonian Office of Educational Technology. That's a central education office at the Smithsonian. And I'm joined by wonderful colleagues today from the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. We have Shannon Baldioli, who's the manager of youth and teacher programs. Also, Ashley Ratanawan, who's an education specialist for teacher professional development. And also Jessica Sadler, who's a teacher professional development fellow. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Also behind the scenes, we have Rhett Ransom, who's providing IT support from the Office of Educational Technology. So in our session today, we'll consider how space exploration reflects America's desire to push scientific understanding and technological innovation. We'll discuss aviation and space heroines who rose to the challenges of their fields. And as I mentioned before, you'll also participate in a design challenge. So today's session really aims to support you in helping your students tackle STEAM challenges in the classroom, from your early learners to learners who need more scaffolding. And you'll leave today with activity ideas and strategies to push students to iterate even after they've met their design goals. Um, all right. So if you want to go grab those supplies, once again, there are scissors, paper, and tape. So I see some of you are starting to introduce yourselves. If you haven't yet, please feel free to do so. We'd love to know where you're joining us from. If you need captions, you can press on the CC button that you should see probably at the bottom of your screen. Also, we mean for this session to be as interactive as possible. So please do share your comments and questions in the chat. You can also use the Q&A button. We'll try to keep up with all of your comments and questions either in real time, or if not, we'll definitely get to them at the end of the session. One thing when you're writing in the chat, you might want to tag it so that it goes to everyone instead of, sometimes people send it just to the hosts and panelists, which we love to see it, but not everyone is. So that's up to you. All right. So today's session is the sixth one in a 10-part series that's meant to explore teaching techniques, strategies, and resources to help tell the story of America's 250th and to support student learning at this milestone moment in American history. Altogether, the series celebrates well-known people, events, and accomplishments of our nation, and also provides opportunities to discuss lesser-told histories that together form our national narrative. Our intention or our hope is that you'll leave each session with a collection of techniques and ideas to help students think critically and recognize their own value, appreciate others' perspectives, and gain confidence to be engaged learners. So you can find information about these sessions at the link showing on the slide there, and I'll also put it in the chat. We also provide a Learning Lab collection to accompany each session, and I'll also put that link in the chat. So that way you don't have to wonder, there's this great resource, where can I find it again? You can find everything in that collection. So a reminder that this session is being recorded and the archive will be posted to YouTube, and you can also find that on the one page for the Celebrating America at 250. And so I'm going to turn it over now to Shannon and give the opening question, which is, what does it mean to rise to a challenge? What does it mean to rise to a challenge? So please feel free to put your thoughts in the chat.
Thanks so much, Philippa. Really excited to be joining all of you today. Gonna shout out Patty and Jeff, who I saw in the chat. They are participants in a wonderful professional development program here at NASM, and it was really exciting for Jess and Ashley and I to see your names pop up. So yeah, please do in the chat include your answers to what does it mean to rise to a challenge. I'm going to do a little chatting about some historical heroines of aviation and space flight and want to chat a little bit about rising to challenges before I turn it over to Ashley and Jess to talk about design challenges and helping your students rise to challenges, especially those students that might be your early finishers and be like, oh, did it, done, we're good to go. How you can encourage them to kind of take the next step. Um, so I manage youth and teacher programs here at the National Air and Space Museum. And here in America's 250th, the National Air and Space Museum will be turning 50. We celebrate our 50th anniversary this summer with the opening of some newly renovated galleries. And some of the stories that I'm going to share with you today are featured in those galleries. So it ties really nicely to our theme here. So really quickly, I want to go over a couple of ground rules that we always share when we share professional development. I won't read them all to you because I know you all can do that. But we want to be sure that this session today is a place where we're listening deeply, being empathetic, and respecting each other. Hopefully, there won't be too many moments of frustration, although Ashley and I have both been struggling with our design challenge this afternoon. But please just keep these in mind as we chat together. Um, and again, if you want to be dropping those, what does it mean to rise to a challenge into the chat? We would love to see them. So we're going to start off with a little collaborative activity today, and I would love for some chat participation on that. We are going to do a Project Zero thinking routine. If you aren't familiar with Project Zero, it comes out of Harvard's Graduate School for Education, and these are routines that you can use with your students. The idea is that they're used regularly, hence routines. And they give students ways to kind of peek into their own thinking and help organize their thoughts. So we're going to use a thinking routine called See, Think, Wonder. It's one of the sort of cornerstone thinking routines. It's a simple one with three questions. As you can imagine, what do you see? What do you think about that? And what does it make you wonder? And I will write those things in the chat as well. But in this routine, you can use it to look at objects, which is our favorite thing to do here in museums. But you can also use it to look at photographs. So we're going to take a look at a photograph in a moment. And I am just going to ask folks to, you can answer all three questions. You can answer just one of those questions. But in the chat, you can talk about what you see, what you think about that, or what comes to mind, and what it makes you wonder. And I'm going to pause for just a second because I see a couple of things in the chat and I wanted to bring them to the surface. So thank you, Kay. I really appreciate you being the first one to jump in there, talking about rising to a challenge, meaning being creative, courageous, and persistent, as well as having integrity. I use the word persist so much in my house. I have two little humans at home, little ladies, and we say all the time, like, great job persisting with tying your shoes. So that's a word that's in my vocabulary a lot. Jeff mentioned pushing boundaries, either your own boundaries or those that others may have set. Showing up with intention, I really appreciate all of those. And I'm excited to talk about some boundary pushers in a moment. So thank you again. Pivoting back to See, Think, Wonder. We're going to flash in, not flash, we're going to put an image up here on the screen and you can feel free to answer one or all of those questions. So what do you see? What do you think about? Or what does that make you think? And what do you wonder when looking at this image? We're going to take about a minute to do this. Philippa, thank you for putting the questions in the chat. So I see a wondering of why this airplane is upside down. You see airplane and adventure. You wonder how it works and how it can be used. Lots of wonderings about that upside down. Jeff is an insider because I know he has stood under this plane before, but he sees an aerobatic airplane. Is it really upside down is a great question. Location. Thank you all so much for participating and tossing those things in there. Oh, great question. I wonder if you can see it from outside too. And now that you say that, I'm not sure I could answer that question despite having walked through the doors of this building almost every day for the last 13 years. Yeah, the colorful pattern painted on it. Wondering about significance in history, why the particular colors. It reminds me of an insect. I love that. It reminds me a little bit of a bird. I get sort of parrot vibes from the wings, but I really love those observations. Amazing. Is it a picture or a model? So this is a photograph of a real airplane, and it belonged to a boundary pusher named Betty Skelton. Philip, if you want to take us to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about her. So the reason I chose this airplane, admittedly, is because my 7-year-old is obsessed with it. She's obsessed with Betty Skelton and has been obsessed with Betty Skelton and Little Stinker since she was a very little stinker. This airplane hangs, it's the first airplane you see when you walk into our Stephen F. Udvar-Hazy Center. So many of you may have been to the museum on the National Mall in DC. The three of us, actually, Jess, Ashley, and I are here at the Udvar-Hazy Center, which is in Chantilly. We house a lot of the larger artifacts in our collection, but Little Stinker hangs right in the entryway. So she's the first thing that you see. And as many of you noted, it's upside down because this is an aerobatic airplane, as someone pointed out. So I brought Betty Skelton to you first, partially to talk about my kids, but also to talk a little bit about her as a sort of boundary pusher. Um, as a woman, she dreamed of being a naval aviator. She considered going into space, but those weren't options for her at the time. So she kind of charted her own course. So we're talking about persistence. Betty was known as the First Lady of Firsts. She broke various air and land records. So when she found she couldn't be a naval aviator, she became a flight instructor and then became an aerobat, which was kind of a new profession at the time. Aviation was new at the beginning of the 20th century. So she was flying airplanes. She became famous for the inverted ribbon cut. So that's part of the reason our airplane hangs upside down. She would fly upside down and cut a ribbon like at the end of a race, to much, excitement and accolades. And this plane, the Pitt Special, was one that Betty actually had to convince the company that made the plane to let her fly because she was a woman and they weren't sure they wanted that sort of publicity and that sort of press. But she's now hanging in the Smithsonian. So let's talk about the persistence and work at that when it comes to rising to challenges. Once she finished doing all kinds of things in the air, she became a race car driver and raced boats for a little while. She also was one of the Lovelace Foundation's participants in the astronaut tests that the Mercury astronauts took. She was one of a variety of women that did it, even though none of those ladies got to go to space. And I put up there the book Daredevil, The Daring Life of Betty Skelton. If you all are teachers of kiddos that are into picture books, this is a great one. But it's also really great to kind of scaffold down to learners, English language learners, kids that might just need a little extra time. It's got some great biographical info in there. So it's a great one to use if you're talking biography. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the lady that was on the front of the slide deck, Pancho Barnes. So Florence Lowe Barnes, also known as Pancho, was a stunt woman, and I really appreciate that someone was talking about rising to challenges being something that's about integrity and tenacity. Pancho Barnes was raised, she was an heiress. She came from privilege, and she decided that instead of sort of taking the proper young lady path, she was going to become a first stunt rider on horses and then a stunt flyer in airplanes. And Pancho is somewhat famous for going toe to toe with Howard Hughes. He was not paying his stunt pilots particularly well, and Pancho actually founded the Stunt Pilots Union so that folks were both protected from the danger that is being a stunt pilot and also were compensated properly. She was a community organizer. She founded the Happy Bottom Riding Club. If anyone's ever been to Edwards Air Force Base in California, she had a little property where she hosted many of the aviation names of the day. Um, and then the last person I'm going to mention, so that we can get on to the design challenge piece, is Wally Funk, who some of you may have seen in the news in the last several years. Um, Philippa was talking at the beginning about space travel sort of being something that pushes the boundaries and that has pushed us to innovate. And Wally Funk, from the time she was a child, wanted to go to space. She learned how to fly at a young age, like both of our other, like Pancho Barnes and Betty Skelton. She became a flight instructor on a military base, but then couldn't become a commercial pilot because she was a woman. So instead, she became a safety professional and helped train commercial pilots to understand safety risks and mitigate risks. She did that for a lot of her life. But Wally Funk was also the youngest woman in the Lovelace Foundation's tests for the Mercury astronauts. So there was a group of women that did all the same testing as those first seven gents did. Many of them, like Wally, passed with flying colors, but NASA wasn't quite ready to send a woman to space. But Wally persisted, and you see her in an image there with some of the other Lovelace women. They were at Eileen Collins' launch of the space shuttle. Eileen Collins was the first woman to pilot the space shuttle, and some of these folks showed up just in support of her. But then at age 82, just a couple of years ago, Wally actually got to go into space. She was among the crew of the first Blue Origin flight. And so she was, for a little while, the oldest person that went to space. William Shatner has since broken that record, but she still speaks so fondly of it, and is such an advocate for it and so full of joy. You see her in that picture, and she just is the kind of person that reminds me immediately of rising to challenges. She was not going to be deterred and told one of our curators who wrote a book about the Lovelace Foundation women that she didn't care if she was 100, she was going to space. So these are just a couple of little pocket-sized stories that folks can take with them when they're talking to their students about folks that rose to challenges. And I am going to pass it over to Ashley because now we want to get into the nitty-gritty a little bit about how you can get your students to rise to design challenges.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashley One. I'm an education specialist here at the Natural Air and Space Museum. I'm primarily doing teacher professional development in the Teacher Innovator Institute. So we're going to take some of the ideas from those stories that Shannon just shared with us and think about how we can build this idea of persistence for our students and rising to challenges. Go ahead and write in the chat, what is a design challenge? Have you used one before? Or what do you hear? What do you think about when you hear the word design challenge? Give you guys like a minute to write that in the chat. Thanks, Philippa, for writing that in. So we'll be talking about this today and how we could use it in the classroom to build that idea of persistence for our students. Alexandra shares limited materials, clear goals, multiple avenues for success. Oh yeah, a lot of great answers. Kay shares an ill-constructed problem that students must figure out with this theme-based protocol. An open-ended problem with a challenge to solve, opportunity to make a plan. Excellent answers, everyone. Thanks, Peggy. Patrick, given a problem, students work through a process to attempt a solution to that problem. Yeah, everyone is check, check, check. Design challenges articulate problems that you or someone else, your community, is trying to solve and helps you define a scope that's not too narrow, nor is it too broad. And like a lot of folks have shared in the chat, it provides criteria and parameters for students to follow, but doesn't give an exact answer to a design challenge. We're gonna do something called a waterfall if no one's ever done it. We're gonna answer the second question. Why would you use a design challenge in the classroom? I'm gonna have everyone write their answer, but we're gonna wait for everyone to write it and then we'll put it all in at the same time. Does that make sense? So write the answer to the second question. Why would you use this design challenge? Write it in the chat, and then when I say I'll go 3, 2, 1, and then everyone will send it at the same time. Okay. The marshmallow spaghetti challenge is great for all ages. We'll definitely have to hear about that. So I'm gonna go 3, 2, 1, and then everyone will share their answers to why would you use a design challenge? Okay. 3, 2, 1. Awesome. Yes, these are all great answers. Why would you use that? use this design challenge in the classroom to help motivate students, teach teamwork, analytical skills. Nathan says self-directed problem solving. Shane, solving real-world problems based on some sort of significance that reaches students on multiple levels, seeing their ideas. So these are all reasons that you could use a design challenge. The design challenge allows students to have attainable goals for all learners, no matter if they're ELL learners, SPED students. If you have 30 or 5 students, each student can lend their knowledge to help solve a problem, a real world problem, and come up with different ideas. We'll go to the next slide now, Philippa. Thanks for all your great answers. Someone shared earlier about design challenges using STEAM frameworks. So we'll talk a little bit about different types of STEAM frameworks you can use to talk about design challenges and to structure them. A design challenge is maker empowerment in its purest sense, and it allows learners to see the world and understand the systems that they live in, and builds a sense of agency in students so they can see these systems and understand what they can have an effect on. Design challenges, like everyone shared in the chat, help students build skills and become more aware of opportunities to make change and empower students to be curious thinkers about their world. We're going to look through the 5E instructional model about a design challenge. I'm sure some of y'all have used it. If you've used design challenges in the classroom, what models have you used in your classroom? There's a bunch of different ones out there, but if you've used it in there, type it in the chat of something that you've used, if not 5E. But I'll talk through the 5E briefly. I'm sure a lot of y'all have used it or heard of it. The 5E works through these very fun 5Es: engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. And just briefly going through them: engaging, using hooks to engage students locally, globally, how to get students excited about your design. Exploring, this is mostly the student-driven part, where students are able to explore and look at different activities and brainstorm around a topic. And this is the part where your students could lead you somewhere else that you weren't expecting. The explain, after you kind of find out your student interests, and then you're able to dive into the explain part, where you can dive into the content that you're looking at. Extend, opportunity extend, build an object and use your 5E model around that, or any other model you have. And extend out from where they're learning. And then evaluate. This is the part where you're focusing on your student learning and how you will evaluate it. This could be a reflection piece, a model, or maybe a project they've done together. Ruth shares that they've used the engineering design project. That one is really awesome, and another one you can use. There are also things like project-based learning, guided inquiry, design. So there's tons out there that you can use. You don't necessarily have to use this one. Philippa, we can go to the next one. So we'll talk a little bit about why we use these in the classroom. We want students to participate, to learn how to problem solve, iterate, take risks, see failure as an opportunity, and making the most of our unexpected outcomes. This helps students become more self-directed. And then I think folks in the chat also shared about like teamwork and community and building that in. And like I shared earlier, living in a designed world, students have more inclination to collaborate together, work on projects that affect their community, and understand how to problem solve. This GIF on the side is a project actually done by teachers at the Teacher Innovator Institute. There is an example of design challenge that they did there to share back with their students. This was a solar-powered carnival ride, which looks very complicated, but is just simple circuitry, solar cells, and basic crafts and recycled materials. That's the only things they had, and they had to make any kind of carnival ride that was moving. This is just a more complicated example of something that you could do in the classroom, but doesn't really use a lot of complicated materials. Philippa, can we get a next one, please? Okay, so I'm just going to walk through a design challenge that we did here at the museum. This is from one of our very lovely teachers in our Teacher Innovator Institute, Lisa Pitts. She shared a phenomena-based design challenge that we did together. And I'm going to walk us through the 5E model using her design challenge. The engage and the hook and the explore. This is through a natural phenomena, which are just observable events in the universe that we can use to in our science knowledge to explain or predict. So using that hook for looking at a video of flying animals, specifically gliders and bats and flying squirrels, and having students walk through using the see, connect, think, connect, wonder, which Shannon talked about earlier, is part of the Harvard's Project Zero. This is like just an example of their sentence starters to help students guide their thinking and observations while looking at videos and looking at these animals. The explore part, having them do nature walks, real life observation videos, and having prompting questions for these students for their see, think, wonder, connect. How do these animals stay in the air so long? What shapes and structures support their flight? How can we create designs that sustain their flight? Students naturally will start drawing comparisons to different things that they see flying. Can we go to the next one, Philippa, please? Being at the Air and Space Museum, we have plenty of different artifacts that we look at. Moving into the explore and explain, having students draw models to think how animals body structures help it stay in the air, and then looking at man-made gliders that also do similar things, comparing, contrasting how we take design elements from things that we've seen and then build. There's a great resource here for our younger learners on great gliders for story time. Thanks, Shannon, for sharing that in the chat. From here, students can explore what phenomena makes these gliders fly, what are other things that can fly or guide, and students generally start going towards airplanes. We'll go to the next one. We had students and teachers go look on the floor here at Air and Space and look at all the different types of artifacts we have. These are just some that I pulled that students could look at. But if you're here, it'd be awesome to go and just look at the floor. But you can also look at our learning lab that Philippa linked earlier to be able to see these different planes, having students look and observe, compare and contrast from the phenomena they saw with the gliding animals and what did they see with these planes that help them fly. And this kind of ties into our object-based learning and close looking at objects. We'll go to the next one. Nope. And the slides are kind of weird, but that's okay. So we brought this into from the extension and evaluate to be able to look at our students' learning and teachers' learning. The challenge was to build a glider that could go the longest, fly the longest in from the second floor. And these are two different teams' versions of the different gliders that they made. You can see they're both very different in their design and the way that they decided to go forth with it. But this, again, only used very basic craft materials. It's like paper, little wood pieces, and recycled materials. And then the challenge they got was to make a glider stay airborne for the longest possible time and distance. And we had teachers be able to do this twice in a classroom. You could have them do it 2 or 3 times over a period of time, but talking about and giving them that chance to do the iterative design, see how long it takes for the airplane to actually stay in the air, and then be able to make changes based on what they've done. And then you can use the evaluate with team debriefs, individual reflections, seeing their iterative process, and even using counter examples of maybe why their artifact didn't work or why didn't it work, and then how did you modify that? Can we get the next one, Philippa? So I just walked us through this design challenge with the 5E model, but this challenge was also made with the OpenSciEd model, instructional model. So this is just another example of how you could use pretty much any kind of instructional model that you're already using in your school and classroom, and then apply this design challenge to be help students to extend that learning. Can we get a next one, Philippa? Thank you. So now we're going to try a design challenge together. So if you had your paper, tape, and scissors from earlier, or you can go ahead and grab it. Our design challenge is going to be pretty simple, and it kind of just shows that you don't need a bunch of different things to be able to have your students iterate and try and create things. You can just use paper, scissors, and tape, things that you already have in your classroom. The specific criteria in the classroom, you would probably give more parameters to students, but the one I'm just going to give y'all today is we're going to try to build the tallest paper tower by the end of the presentation, so maybe around 10 minutes. Feel free to iterate and test and try to make a different type. I definitely tried earlier and kind of flew too close to the sun and had to pivot a lot. But you could build upon this challenge. This doesn't have to be just the tallest tower. You can add like a weight and see like you have to build the tallest tower that can hold a certain weight. This could also be changed into doing a paper bridge and have like two books and then a bridge across, and it has to hold something like pennies or coins and see how many pennies or coins that a bridge can hold. So there's plenty of different ways you can like iterate and change this to use it in your classroom. While you're doing that, I'm going to have Jess come on and talk about how you could use early finisher strategies to extend and help your students that are like, I'm done now, what now, in the classroom. So we can go to the next slide.
Hello. So I am Jessica, or Jess, as I prefer, and currently am typically usually teaching secondary science in Kansas, mostly middle school, and am really fortunate to be here in this teacher professional development fellow role, which is a very fancy title for a very fabulous experience that I'm having. So I am going to talk about strategies and things that I have personally used in my classroom and share some of the resources to things that I've made for that prior to like coming out just very recently. So most of them, in fact, all of them are still fairly current, which is exciting. The first thing that when it comes to early finisher strategies, these are just some, I think probably my personal tried and trues. Feel free to make faces at them or agree with them. All things are fine. So really it's just on the thoughts and management of it. I believe that early finishing tasks should reinforce that extended learning piece. Sometimes you can run into a slippery slope of if it's teaching new content. I would find that like I might accidentally be widening the gap between students just because others may never finish their regular things early enough to do an early finisher's task, right? There should be an element of self-management to them. The more self-managed, the better for myself, I would say. And the idea that it should never feel like a punishment for being like fast or completing work where you have technically met all the constraints and requirements, and then you feel like you're getting extra work. I find early finisher strategies and uses to be super helpful in the classroom. Again, teaching middle school, unoccupied time is not a good time for anybody. I find that that's when the most goosey things that you would not prefer to have happen do. So some other tips for these would be to teach the early finisher routines explicitly. I think a lot of times what happens is if I don't teach it explicitly, then I find that sometimes the kids are just yucking around doing not exactly what it should be. And then it's kind of like, well, we didn't know. Or there's a lot of downtime where I feel like I'm having to notice that you haven't moved on to something else, even though you know you could because we were at that moment. So definitely teaching them explicitly towards the beginning of the year. And then as you add new ones, perhaps have consistency in them. So I like to have a few that are offered for a while and then bring up something else. I think it can be hard to want or naturally feel inclined to grade everything or grade a lot of the things, mostly because the students, when you tell them they're doing this extended learning opportunity, they ask, is it for a grade? This could be a nice time to consider maybe using some of the AI feedback platforms that are becoming more popular. I tend to use it this way because using it for assignments, like if I'm using AI to create an assignment, the students are using AI to do it, and then I'm giving feedback through it, like why make the assignment, right? So this can be a really nice way to provide feedback on something without technically feeling like there needs to be a grade provided, especially since you might not have all students doing it. And then any kind of visual signals, I like to have either charts or magnet places where they can move so I can kind of naturally understand, because this is self-managed, maybe I'm working with Ashley, but I can look over and be like, Shannon's magnet's here, so I'm gonna in my mind know this is what Shannon's working on, great, and then can kind of check in as you have time, right? So those would be the things that I would suggest going into this. Philippa, do you mind advancing, please? Awesome. So choice boards, not super novel, not anything that I'm sure most of us haven't at least heard before. And so something that is helpful for this is one that I created relating to specifically Hazy. And so different and like breakdowns of doing things that are maybe more art and draw based versus things that are maybe more writing out skills, so on and so forth. You'll get a link to this, so I'm not going to take the time to read all of these options to you. I tend to go with about 9. You can do different strategies where you have students, you have to make a 3 in a row situation or expand upon that, whatever patterns you might want to do, or you might say you have to do an artistic one, a writing one, a something, a build, whatever, however you want to build those. They're really easy. If you want to have printouts, I like to have them and share them out digitally through an LMS like a Google Classroom or Schoology or whatever you use. You can also do large ones on the whiteboard. I don't always do that, but sometimes it's fun to have them that way. And the students throw pop darts at them or something with like a suction cup, and whatever you land on, that's the one you do. Gobs of different ways to use them. I also find that the earlier finishers or just choice boards in general can be really helpful to extend on standards. So one of my standards is teaching basically celestial patterns, and it's really talking about the moon phases, and that does not take as long as our curricular resource would like to believe that it does. And so I think that having a choice board created on other topics that are still within a unit can be really helpful too. Philippa, I hate to interrupt. If your tower is no good, it's because I bothered you. Could you advance forward, please? Thank you. Another one that's really lovely to have, I quantify them as brain builder or classify them as brain builders. So I'll do a lot with logic puzzles or riddles. I think that sometimes it runs into the slope of people thinking that it needs to be a worksheet, and it can be, but it very much doesn't have to be. So I have a lot of logic-based, I guess you would call them board games, like Onitama, Find Your Way Gnome, Circuit Mazes, Color Cue. So a lot of deep thinking, logical. I have sets that you play by yourself with one other person, ones that you play with multiple people. And those can be a nice, hey, you're done, but we're still going to be doing like a deep thinking thing. We're not just going to maybe play on our computer or something like that. Foldology are really neat. They are little origami squares that you have to fold with certain conditions to get it to come up with a picture. The STEAM challenge cards, what I'm putting in the chat, that will force copy what I'm going to be talking about. These are examples of ones I've used. Feel free to use them for you or don't. The first example on there talks about a bridge building design challenge. With that particular one, I like to do ones that extend upon each other. And so the first one, you make a bridge. Great. How much weight can it hold? Similar to like you're making a tower now. Great. How tall can it be, right? And then with that same design, then they have to go, okay, well, now you have to make a stronger bridge. And I also need you to tell me how you're certain that it's stronger. So stronger because it held more weight, it was less wiggly. I don't know, whatever your reasons are. And then this one expands into a third challenge realm where now we're still talking about the same concept. You are doing it again, but now you're building a bridge that looks like Da Vinci's bridge. So there's a specific object brought to it, gives a little bit of explanation to it. The second one, if you're looking at that page with me, or if you're building, that's totally cool too. But I have a grid of different resources. I have steam jars that I'll have out for different units. And so they go with science, technology, engineering. Science is its own, technology and engineering is lumped into one. Art and design is lumped into another one, and then math. And I have the strips color coded and they're cut apart. And so kids, if they can't decide, or, there's not a choice board up or something like that, they can go over to the jar and reach in and pull out one of those strips. And so they may get a science one that says, design a testable question related to today's content, or a mathematics one, they might have to estimate and justify a measurement related to the day's lesson or something like that. I like those because you can kind of continue to add to the jar as the year goes on if you want, or build new ones as needed. And then one of the last ones that my students really love would be the Lego challenge task cards, just because Legos are, I think, innately enjoyable for a lot of humans. And so with that particular one, I have some of the basics on there. If you click into the larger document, I think I gave 12 that are created. And of those 12, the thing that I would suggest, these are ones that I made because I go back to that self-managed piece. And a lot of times it'll happen heavily at the beginning where you're trying to explicitly teach those routines, and you'll have kids that they look at something and there are just no ways to think around it. And so they'll be, instantly stuck, right? And then they just can't go on until they've asked you a question. So if I'm doing something task card related, you'll notice on these, most of them have, I think all of them do, unless I missed one, have a focus on there. And so I'm telling you to build a bridge that spans 30 centimeters and can support the most mass, right? That's pretty easy to understand for a majority. But just in case, focus is on there. So I'm telling you, you might want to consider tension, compression, structural design. So if they get really stuck, they're able to kind of Google and go into extra vocabulary areas where it's like, okay, I may not be able to ask her right now, but I can probably start to pull some of this together. And then the last one on here, the write or draw options, concept icons, will be where students draw truly an icon, like powering something on or off, like the circle with the line through it. But they would develop an icon related to, and then perhaps it's our unit vocabulary or something. So I might say, create an icon that represents drag, or something like that. For the question generator, I like that one where the students have to write 3 questions about the topic. One has to be have a realm of factualness to it. The other one has to be conceptual. And the last one is a what if. The way that I define the conceptual questions to my students would be something like, instead of saying calculate the speed of a car, right? That's pretty rote. If you can do the process, great, done. Where I might say, if the car's mass doubles, how does that affect its ability to brake? That's a more conceptual idea where it's going to require that they're working with the material a little more deeply in their mind. For the silent sketch, it's exactly what it sounds like. I might give them a prompt, draw how lift works, but you can use absolutely no words. So how are you going to convey that visually? And then the blueprint remix would be giving them a part. So for this particular one, I might say redesign a part of an aircraft. Maybe it's the wing, the nose, heat shield, something like that, whatever it is. You have to redesign that and create a blueprint of it. And it's a silent opportunity. So, Philippa, can you go again, please? Awesome. And then I will always have an always available section where maybe I am dragging that day and I don't have updated something or another's. There's always a handful of early finisher opportunities that are always available. So coding challenges, I have I'm fortunate to have several different kinds of robots that I've acquired over the years. And so there's always some kind of either content relevant, or so many of those platforms have coding cards, extra things that are already created for you that you can use. So that is always an option. The design heuristic cards, I like those. Thank you, Shannon. Shannon just put in a one pager for that, I guess is what I would call it. There are 77 cards. This lists kind of in that middle section, it says the design heuristics. It lists the titles of all 77 without you actually combing through the cards. So perhaps you could take a peek and decide how that feels to you. I love them. I use them a lot for students have created something, whatever it may be, and then they come and they have to randomly pull one of the design heuristic cards, or they may be halfway through their build and I kind of casually walk around and cause chaos because how fun is that? And I assign them a card on purpose, different things like that. And so with that, what I do love about them and want to highlight the front. So for this example, card 76, they have to utilize the opposite space. They give a very geometric shape example on the front of all of them and kind of define what that means. And then on the back, they give an example of how that might look as a more like real engineered product. Most of them are very real products. Some of them are so like a real concept that you might not question whether it is or is not, right? So on this particular one, you have to utilize opposite space. So it gives the example of a shoe that the laces wrap in a different way, and then they have a spike on the bottom. So this is very much like a track outdoor performance shoe. And then the other one is a specific type of chair that uses that underspace so that you're sitting on top, but there's something going on, I guess, below. And then ongoing choices, I think these are very common. So passion projects, if you have some kind of extension activity, I go back to the idea of some of those content related games. I think it's nice for students to have voice and choice every once in a while with stuff that you're asking them to do that feels like extra. And so the passion project, usually they have something that they're kind of continuously working on if they have that opportunity or want to, things like that. So if you have questions in the chat, feel free to ask them, but that is my moment. And I'm going to pass it on to the question slide, which can be for anybody, not just me.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So we can close out and go to Q&A if people want to ask questions. I just want to show you one thing before we move on, which is we would really appreciate your feedback about today's session. This was really, really fun and interesting and chock full of really great ideas. And so we'd really love to hear from you. And I'll also put that link in the chat. But if you feel like getting out your phone and using that QR code, please do. And then before I turn off the sharing, would one of you like to walk us quickly through what's in the collection? Okay, so here's that.
So in the Learning Lab collection, we added many of the artifacts that we talked about. So Little Stinker is the first one on there. And then all of the glider examples that Ashley showed are also in there. These are actual objects in our collection, many of them hanging right out here at the Udvar-Hazy Center behind us. So you can get some more information there. In the teaching techniques section, we shared See, Think, Wonder and some other Project Zero thinking routines, as well as the OpenSciEd model that Ashley shared and the design heuristics cards. Those cards and more info about them is available beyond that one pager that Jess shared. And then we've got some other Smithsonian resources on there as well that include, Philippa, if you could scroll down. One of them I know is the aerospace episode on Pancho Barnes. So if you were interested in the stories that I zipped through at the beginning there, we have a little bit more background information. Wally Funk was the recipient of the Michael Collins Trophy that the National Air and Space Museum awards every year. And our in-house podcast at NASM Airspace did a really great episode on Pancho Barnes, if you want to listen to something on your way home today. There's also a video that we didn't show at the beginning with a flying lizard, as that design challenge was inspired by creatures that fly that are expected, and then creatures that fly that maybe you don't always expect, like lizards.
Oh, that is so great. Thank you. And people are asking if they can get a choice of the copy of the choice board. Is that something I could add to the collection?
Yeah, I can share that file with you. Yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay, if you're good with that, then I can just add that to the collection and everyone can have it. Are
Philippa,
there
your tower
any?
is so impressive.
I'm like a little bit proud of this thing.
Look at Ashley's beautiful too. I went with the rolled paper model, which was what I watched some teachers do it this summer, but my paper was not precisely rolled as I wanted it to be. Did anybody
Awesome.
out there have success or felt like they had success with the tower or have other questions for us? I don't feel like I was successful, so I wouldn't be an early finisher on this one.
Mine just fell. It was doing well before. Um, do we have any questions? I'm not sure we do.
It's the end of the day on one of those weeks where Wednesday feels like a Tuesday. I don't know if everyone out there had off Monday. Our local schools were off Monday and yesterday, so what a wacky week. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was really a wonderful session. And so I put a bunch of links in there also. So the link to the collection, the link to the evaluation form, and also if you'd like to join us for future sessions. And just thank you so much to our three presenters. It was really a wonderful, wonderful session today. I appreciate your being here. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye.
Have a good evening.